Welcome and thank you for being here tonight. Apologies for a few of these technical issues. The fact that you've shown up at all on a Tuesday evening, a webinar about a specific market, tells me that you're someone who takes this seriously, and that's a really good sign. So thank you for your patience. Tonight's a little different though to most property webinars that you may have attended. We're not going to tell you property is great as an investment. You already know that. We're not going to recycle headlines or show you a glossy brochure. What we're going to do tonight is show you a specific opportunity. It's 5 ready-built properties in a regional New South Wales town. And we're going to go through the full data case behind why we're recommending it and exactly what it would look like to own one of these. So my name's Scott Aggett. I'm the founder of Green Shoots Property. We're a full-service buyers agency and we work exclusively for investors. And we're borderless, right? Which means every location decision we make is led by data, not geography. We don't have any bias to a state or even a preferred postcode. We're just going to follow the evidence. And tonight we're focused on a very specific type of investment, and that is ready built. So new construction, regional New South Wales. And I want to be clear up front, this only makes sense if the numbers work for your personal situation. So if they do, the timing's good. If they don't, the best use of tonight is understanding what to look for when you're ready to move. So let's jump on through and get straight into it. This is the problem that I've got. So we're just going to tab across here. Is that working for you? Yep, cool. So the quick roadmap for tonight, so you know where we're going. We'll start with what actually changed in the federal budget because there's a lot of noise around negative gearing and I want to cut through it clearly and quickly. It's relevant to these 5 properties that we're going to talk about specifically tonight. Then we'll build the data case as for this suburb as specific market, right? So suburb metrics, growth history, infrastructure pipeline, supply and demand signals. We'll go through all of that. And after that, a section on why ready built matters and what off the plan risk actually looks like in practice. And then we're going to go property by property. So 5 assets and individually deep dive those. And we're going to finish with how to move forward if any of this resonates with you tonight. So one important note before we go any further, everything here that I'm presenting tonight is factual market data and information. It's not personal financial advice. So before making any investment decision, you should speak with your own accountant, your solicitor, or your financial advisor who can assess your very specific and bespoke position. We facilitate those conversations. We just can't make those calls for you. So before we get into the numbers, I want to be clear about how we work because it gives context to everything you're about to see. Green Shoots, as I say, is a full service buyers agency. We work for you, the investor, not the vendor, not the developer. Our fee comes directly from the buyer, which means our recommendations are never influenced by a commission from the other side of the transaction. We charge transparently, and it's the first thing you'll see on our website, $20,000 including GST in total as per as per any purchase. It's $10,000 up front. It's $10,000 once the client enters into an unconditional contract of purchase. Our market selection process runs through HTAG analytics. This is the best data platform I've seen in 30 years doing it. It's institutional grade suburb data that most individual investors don't have access to. It's as simple as that. So if a market doesn't pass the filter at suburb level, we don't get to a property level, right? The suburb comes first. Once the market clears, we get that pass mark on that suburb data. We assess every individual property on configuration, build quality, the price against comparable sales, the rental demand there locally, and what your exit options look like in 5, 10 years or however long that you might be planning to hold this property. You're not going to see the ones that don't make it through that cut, okay? And the third filter, I should say, is you, right? Your equity position, your specific borrowing capacity, your tax situation, your time horizon. So we run individual conversations. We don't do group recommendations. What's right for one person in this webinar may not be right for another. So this is the first of 5 sections tonight. So we'll get into the federal budget, which just dropped recently. There's been a lot of coverage about negative gearing changes, and I want to spend a few minutes on what actually changed because the headlines have not been particularly precise about this and why it matters specifically to the properties that you're going to see tonight. Now, let me be direct, I should say, about this because I think it's important and often misreported. So from July 1st, 2027, negative gearing on established properties changes, right? So if you buy an existing house and it runs at a rental loss, you'll no longer be able to offset that loss against your personal income in the year it occurs. The loss can be carried forward, but that's a different thing to what most investors have relied on for decades. And that's a meaningful change for established property investors. It makes the cash flow case harder and the tax benefit of negatively geared assets less immediate. So new builds are explicitly exempt. Full negative gearing treatment is retained for new construction now and after July 2027. So these 5 properties that we're going to talk about tonight are newly built. The occupation certificates have been issued. They are structurally on the right side of this policy change. And I want to be careful here because the policy didn't create this opportunity. Gunnedah was already compelling on the data before the budget, and that's the town that we're going to talk about. But the policy environment makes that structural case for holding a new build regional property clearer and stronger than it was even 6 months ago, and even probably 3 weeks ago, based on everything that's happened. The second piece I want to address is yield, right? Because in the current rate environment, it matters more than it has in years. So the RBA cash rate is sitting around 4.35%. The national average gross yield on a residential house is about 3.85%. That means the typical investment property in the typical suburb in Australia is running at a yield below the cash rate. And that's before expenses, before management fees, before insurance, before rates, before the cash rate. So that's a cash flow headwind most investors are dealing with right now. These 5 properties are yielding in the range of 5.12 to 5.4% gross, and that's at $650 a week rent. That's above the cash rate. That doesn't make them cash flow positive on every scenario. It depends on your loan structure, your deposit, yeah, and your costs, obviously your outgoing costs, but it changes the starting position meaningfully. Now, when we get to the individual property slides, I'm going to show you what the numbers actually look like. But I wanted to set the rate context first because it underpins why yield has become a more important selection criteria than it was even 3 or 4 years ago. Certainly, the landscape has changed significantly. So let's get into the location itself. Gunnedah, this is the big reveal in New South Wales. And I want to take you through the complete data case for Gunnedah. Not a highlight reel, it's the full picture. And by the end of this section, you should understand exactly why this market made it through our filter and exactly what that risk profile looks like. So Gunnedah sits in the Liverpool Plains. It's a region of northwest New South Wales. It's just near Tamworth. It's about 450 kilometres away from Sydney. Population is just under 13,000, and that's forecast to grow significantly before 2041. The economy, I should say, is diversified in a way that matters for property, right? So we've got agriculture with cotton, wheat, beef. That's the traditional base there. We've got Whitehaven Coal, which has got a significant mining operation in and around that local government authority. We've got health and government services, which are meaningful employers there on the ground. And Gunnedah hosts AgQuip, which is Australia's largest agricultural field day event, which brings national and international attention every 2 years. So it's got a hospital, it's got a TAFE campus, it's got primary and secondary schooling, and it serves as the hub for surrounding communities. And this matters for rental demand, right? So the tenant base is professionals, healthcare workers, tradies, government employees. It's not transient workers, people with stable employment who need a 3-bedroom house, which is why we're going to show you 3-bedroom houses, which is the sweet spot in that Gunnedah market. Now, the typical house price is sitting around $590,000 based on HTAG's data from May 2026. The unemployment rate in Gunnedah is about 1.9%, which is well below the New South Wales state average. Gross regional product is $2.23 billion, and that is up a massive 51% year on year in Gunnedah. Annual house sales are running at between 207 to 249 sales a year, and that's a liquid market for a regional town of this size. You can get in, and importantly, if you choose to, you can get out, which is what is not true amongst many of these shooting star, low socioeconomic regional locations. So let's talk about the growth, because this is where Gunnedah really stands out in the data. So 1 year, it's up 10.11% for the 3-bedroom houses. 3 years, it's up nearly 32%. 5 years, nearly 60%. And 10 years, it's up nearly 90%. So the 10-year annualized rate is compounding at 6.6% per annum. The 5-year annualized rate, according to Hotspotting Data, which is a third-party property research company, is showing closer to 10.56% per annum over that last 5-year period. But the number I want you to focus on isn't the high end, right? It's this one. Gunnedah has never recorded a negative annual growth year in the full HTAG data set, not once. So the minimal or the minimum annual growth ever recorded in Gunnedah is 2.2% plus in any given year. Now, this is not a market that swings wildly, right? It doesn't spike and crash. It compounds steadily. And that's actually harder to find than you might think, because most regional markets that deliver strong headline growth do it really unevenly. So big years followed by, flat or negative years. And Gunnedah has delivered consistent positive growth across every cycle in that data set. And that's the kind of record you want because it's going to underpin a long-term hold. Now let's look at the HTAG analytics score. And this is a scoreboard that we run across, over 15,000 suburbs across Australia to ensure that we're picking the right locations for our customers and de-risking their asset selection. And this is a composite score that aggregate multiple suburb level metrics into a single comparable rating, and it's a scoring from 0 to 100. So capital growth here scores 68, cash flow 79, lower risk is 46, and overall it's a strong 64 out of 100 for Gunnedah. Now, I want to address the lower risk score directly because 46 might sound modest. Regional markets carry inherent concentration risk like single industry towns, distance from capital city markets, smaller buyer pools, and HTAG accounts for all of that in this risk score. Gunnedah is not a single industry town, so it's got agriculture, mining, health, government, and education. And this is what we're looking for, 5 key employers that are driving that and underpinning the local market economy. So 46 score reflects regional exposure, not a fundamental problem, I should say, with the market. The cash flow score of 79 is really exceptional. So that's a top quartile result nationally, which is flying. Independently, Hotspotting's price predictor index has Gunnedah flagged as rising. So positive sales momentum confirmed outside of our own data set here. And the volatility index is just 4 out of 10, which is relatively stable. The GRC price index of 256 points puts Gunnedah as one of the most consistent positive growth markets in all of HTAG's national data set. So we're talking about a highly desirable place to invest long term. 2 things I want to cover on this slide. Where we're at in the market cycle and what supply looks like. So market cycle position is what HTAG calls positive decelerating. Growth is still running. Prices are above where they were, say, 12 months ago, but the rate of growth has eased from its recent peak. The GPD score at 3 years is plus 0.2. At 5 years, it's plus 0.4. The high risk threshold, where you're buying into an overheated market, is plus 0.8 to 1. So we're well within that range. And what this means in plain language is this is a quality entry point, right? It's not distressed. The market isn't broken. It's not peak. You're not buying after everyone else has already run. You're buying while growth is still positive, but before that next acceleration. Gunnedah has actually grown less in its surrounding local government authority, average, recently, right? So it's got potentially a catch up there, and it can correlate with those other areas that share that same council location. On supply, stock on the market is just 0.25%. It's well below our threshold of 0.4%. Inventory, so that's all of the properties on the market get mopped up in just 1.79 months if there's no new listings come to market tomorrow. And that's well below the 2.1 month threshold that we search with. Building approvals, this is the most interesting thing for us and what kind of part of the key reason why we're doing this tonight. It's effectively zero, right? It's 0.04% in terms of building approvals, future supply coming down the line. That's almost no new stock coming into this market. And the average hold period is just under 9 years. So people who buy in Gunnedah hold long term. So it's not a market of short-term speculators. The average hold time in Australia for a house is 7 years. So nearly 9 years is a significant increase on that. And it wouldn't be right to talk about the supply side without looking at demand, right? So let's look at the actual transactional evidence from that market right now. Days on market, the time it takes to sell a property is just 29 days. So our threshold is 35 days when we're searching. Properties are selling here in under a month, and that's a really liquid market. Vendor discounting, right? It's 1.85%. So they're getting 98.15 cents in the dollar. There's no distressed sales here. Sellers aren't cutting to move. Buyers are meeting them really close to that asking price. Vacancy rate is just 2.36%, and that's a balanced rental market. So it's not so tight that tenants can't find anything, but it's tight enough that landlords have got some real pricing power there. And rent growth is running at approximately 8% growth year on year. Hotspotting is reporting 286 rental inquiries per month for Gunnedah properties, and that's an exceptional demand for a town of that size. So both short-term and long-term supply slope metrics are tightening. The rental market's moving in the right direction for investors that are going to be moving on something now, which is encouraging. Infrastructure's next, and that's where I want you to pay really close attention because this is often where the next leg of growth comes from and where a lot of the value in Gunnedah is not yet fully priced in. So energy and resources, let's start there. Whitehaven Victory Extension, or Vickery Extension is a better pronunciation of that, sorry, is a $700 million project that's underway right now. Narrabri Stage 3 is approved to 2044. Boggabri Extension is around 515 million. Santos's Narrabri Gas is a $3.6 billion project, bringing 1,300 construction jobs and 200 permanent positions. And these are real confirmed commitments. They're not proposals, right? On the health front, the $53 million hospital redevelopment was just completed in January. You've got new acute services, expanded emergency department, you've got new birthing facilities, and healthcare accounts for 11% of local employment. So healthcare workers want these three-bedroom houses as they settle down with families. Transport, inland rail through the Narromine Narrabri section was approved in February 2024. Gunnedah's actively lobbying for an intermodal freight terminal. A new employment layer is not yet really factored into most market assessments of this town, and that will make a nice bump if that lands. Lifestyle and tourism. There's a $22.7 million koala sanctuary drawing around 90,000 visitors per year, a $17.5 million boutique hotel, which is 70 rooms, 4.5 stars, and a $10 million CBD upgrade into the main precinct of town, creating 100 plus jobs there as well. None of this is speculative pipeline, right? These are funded, approved, or already developed and delivered projects. So the market hasn't fully digested all of that yet, and that's where I think we've still got some room for prices to move. Section 3. So before we get to the individual properties, I want to spend a few minutes on why ready built matters, because we hear a lot of interest in off the plan from investors, and I want to be really direct about what that risk actually looks like in practice. So off the plan is not a bad investment strategy by definition, but it carries 4 categories of risk that deserve honest treatment rather than footnotes, right? So the first one is timeline risk. Construction delays have been routine since 2021. A project that's quoted at 24 months regularly runs to 30 months. Your pre-approval expires after 90 days. Your income or financial position may have changed by the time you reach settlement of that property. So you're locked into a contract on an asset, but it doesn't actually exist yet, right? So that brings risk. The valuation risk. So this is the one that catches people off guard the most. The bank agreed to lend you, let's say, 750,000. The finished property, when the bank values it at settlement, comes in at 690,000. Now you're going to have to find the $60,000 from your own pocket at short notice, or that deal's going to collapse and fall over. This has happened a lot, right, in recent years, particularly in markets where off the plan supply was really heavy. The next one is speculation or specification risk, I should say. The render and the finished products are different things, and this is something that it rings really true to me. I previously worked at CBRE selling, high-rise apartments off the plan while I was building my current business. What you were promising buyers with the renders that the developers were giving us versus what they actually delivered 2 years or 5 years later is often completely different. The finishes get substituted, common areas don't get delivered. By the time you inspect and find that out, you're already contracted, right? So the developer's disclosure obligations are really narrow in that regard. The next one is builders going bust, right? Insolvency risk. So this is not, hypothetical. Multiple major residential builders collapsed mid-project in the last 3 years, leaving tons of buyers in limbo for months or years with legal resolution, yet to be fully played out. Now, if you go back and look at just even second tier or lower tier builders, there's thousands of those that have gone bankrupt in the last 5 years, which is really sad. Now, I'm not saying these risks make off the plan impossible. I'm saying you should know what you're accepting when you take them on. And this is really key to sort of point out tonight that we get through to then lead us into why we think ready built actually makes a lot of sense. So when we're buying ready built, all 4 of those risks instantly are gone, right? So we've got occupation certificates on these properties that were issued in the last couple of months. The buildings exist. It's been inspected, it's complete, and it's fully compliant with council requirements. So there's no construction risk because there's no more construction. We've walked through these properties. I've physically walked through these properties on Thursday and Friday last week. You're not buying the render. You've got the touch it, feel it, sniff it test that you can walk through yourself. The purchase uses a standard New South Wales purchase contract. It's the same contract used for any established property transaction. So there's no developer disclosure statements, no sunset clauses, no off the plan specific contract provisions as well. And from the moment contracts are exchanged, your property manager can begin marketing for a tenant, right? So if the timing works, a tenant may be even in there by settlement. And that's what we want to do. We want to reduce the vacancy risk and get that money in your pocket and income producing from day one as quickly as we possibly can. So let's talk about the five properties. Who built them, who's selling them, because both really matter. So the builders, GJ Gardner Homes, right? It's a tier one New South Wales builder. Specifically, the Bainbridge built franchise, which holds the New South Wales license there for GJ Gardner. It's one of Australia's largest builders with a national franchise network. Now, it's not a boutique or first time builder. The warranty is iCare HBCF. It's 6 years on major defects. It's 2 years on general defects, and that warranty travels with the property, right? It stays with the property. The vendor is Whitehaven Coal, so multinational, multi-billion dollar company. It's ASX listed. These properties were built as a housing contribution to the Gunnedah community. Whitehaven's not a property developer. They built these homes as part of their commitment to the community. It's an investment in that region because they're there with their major natural resources and other projects. So that's why they're now available at these prices rather than sitting in a developer's portfolio looking to maximize margin. That's not what they're about. So buying from an ASX listed company rather than a developer changes this transaction dynamic completely. There's no marketing spend to recover, no developer margin stacked on top. The vendor has a legitimate reason to transact cleanly and at a fair price and to deliver a really good quality product that's going to last in that local community. Section 4, and let's go property by property. So let's talk about the five assets across these three duplex lots, which is what we've got. So two of the duplex have both halves available. So 1, 2, 1, 2. So you can buy one of them or you can acquire the full pair. And I'll walk you through each of these ones individually. Here's the full portfolio overview before we get into each property though. So three duplex lots, a total of five available assets. So we've got one Yarrandu Close. So there's one unit available here at $625,000. It sits on a combined 718 square metre lot. Occupation certificate is issued, clear titles. There's no option to buy both here because one has already just sold last week to a local owner-occupier family. So there's only one left of that two duplex. Number 12, Yarrandu Close, is two assets available at $660,000 each. Now, there's a slight bump in price for these ones because they're a larger land component. So it's the largest lot in the portfolio, 943 square metres in total. Again, the OC is issued. You'll have both halves available here. You can buy one or you can buy both. And then you've got 10 Pearson Street, which is two assets at $625,000 each. In total, it's 763 square metres of land. Again, OC is issued, clear title, and the pair is available to be purchased. So we're working on rents of $650 a week. We've got six, and this we're talking about for the individual duplexes or double that for the pair. $625,000 property will then sit at a 5.41% gross return, which is massive. The 660 property will sit at a 5.12, which is also really strong. Both well above the national average and above the current cash rate, which we referred to before. So let's talk about one Yarrandu Close, 625 grand. So 3 bed, 2 bath, 2 car, OC issued, title clear, no encumbrances, no charges. I want to flag one piece of market validation here, though, that I think is significant. The other half of the duplex, as I just mentioned on the run before, same price, same spec. It's been purchased by a local Gunnedah owner-occupier family just last week. They paid full price, direct to the sales agent, no negotiation, no buyer's agent involved. So a local who knows the market, who lives there, who could walk through all of the other comparable sales that are available for sale, paid the full asking price, and that means to me, as an expert property advisor here, that the community has confirmed this pricing and it's underpinned by these comparable sales. The cash flow position on this property is strongly positive in year one on the numbers, and that's before the depreciation benefits are applied. So on a new build, it's going to add meaningful upside on the tax side in years 1 through to 10. So here are the photos of one Yarrandu Close. If you take a moment to look at the finish quality, I know the photos are really small, it's very difficult to see. This is a GJ Gardner build to a consistent residential standard, right? The whole way through, stylish kitchen, good natural light, double garage, low maintenance exterior. These are on a really quiet residential street. If you saw any of my videos, promoting tonight's webinar, you would have seen me standing on the front lawn with kangaroos, full-size grey kangaroo on the front lawn of that house there. And then I walked across the road about 30 meters and there's, a family of kangaroos. It is a really beautiful residential spot. Very quiet. You're surrounded by established homes. This is an infill development. It's a really lovely spot. It's got a great vibe. And this is what you're buying, right? It's not a render. The building you see here is the building you're acquiring. The occupation certificate, done. Nothing here is speculative. Now, these are great floor plans. There's no wasted space. There's high ceilings. The finishes are really tasteful, and it's built to a high quality. 12 Yarrandoo Close next. Two assets available at 660,000 each, or if you want the pair, it's 1.32 million for the full duplex. Same configuration, 322. Key differentiator here is the lot size. It's bigger land, and it's the largest in the portfolio. So more land sometimes is more desirable for certain buyers. In this instance, I don't think it's going to make a huge amount of difference. So it's just going to come down to personal preference and what your budget or yield requirements are. It's a clear title again with this one, so it's very, very straightforward for this sale and it's ready to buy and occupy straight away. The pair option here, though, importantly, gives you exit flexibility. So if you are in a position when you can buy both, you can hold both halves and collect two rents or sell individually down the track, two separate exit events rather than one. For investors thinking about portfolio sequencing, owning both halves of a duplex is a staged exit option. Than the single dwelling simply doesn't provide for. So there's an opportunity there. These are the photos of 12 Yarrandoo Close, exactly the same build quality as the one on Yarrandoo, or the one at Yarrandoo, I should say. Slightly larger footprint, as you'll notice. It's a generous lot. It's reflected in the street presence there and the bigger outdoor area. Finished, nothing to touch here, ready to go. So this is a really nice home. 10 Pearson Street. So this is next door to 1 Yarrandoo. 625 per unit, the same as the first one that we discussed. 1.25 million for the pair if you want to buy both of them here. Same price point as that initial one. Same 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-car. Floor plan is just the reverse mirror image. So same room, same quality, same spec, just a slightly different orientation. Again, title's clean. Both halves are available, or you can buy that in the portfolio. And if budget's a primary consideration, Pearson Street and 1 Yarrandoo deliver the same yield, the same configuration, same build quality, but at that lower price point. So the only difference is that orientation. That's the street and exterior view of 10 Pearson Street, consistent with the rest of the portfolio. And it's just good to finish here on this. It's not 3 different builders, right, and 3 different quality levels. It's one builder, one project. They're all built simultaneously, one standard across all 5 of these assets that remain. And there's some interior photos of 10 Pearson. Nice kitchen, living and bedrooms. The finish standard is really strong. I walk through that. You don't have any of those tinny floors or cheap windows and things. Everything is really high quality. All right, so let's put these prices in context against what else is sold in Gunnedah recently, because the best way to validate any asking price is comparable sales evidence in the same market, right? So we've got, and I can furnish you with a list of comparable sales. I just didn't want to go through every one of the URLs here tonight. But we've got a 2017 freestanding house. That's the difference. It's freestanding versus these duplexes. 9 years old, sold in March for $670,000. It's already tenanted at $700 a week. Our new build properties are priced below that 9-year-old comparable. You're getting a newer asset, full builder's warranty, full depreciation schedule, and no deferred maintenance. So it's a lower entry price than that aged equivalent. So that really backs up the high end of the price. And at the low end, we've got a 2006 strata titled villa in a townhouse complex. It's 20 years old, tired. It was a 3-bed, 1-bath, not a 3-bed, 2. Sold for $510,000 in March. Dated asset with strata levies, and it shows genuine market depth even at that lower price point. So we're bookended by some really good comparable sales, which gives us a high level of confidence to act at these asking prices. The only other new construction, importantly to note, in Gunnedah is a 4-bedroom freestanding house that's mid-construction now. It's online for sale. If you want to go and have a look at realestate.com, they're asking $810,000 to $840,000. It's the only competing new build supply, and it's 30% more expensive than our units. Now, one thing that is really important to note is when we're buying in regional locations, we want to buy as close as we can to the typical suburb price. So spending 30% more than where our assets are priced becomes higher risk. So it's not the type of asset that typically we would buy in a regional market. Now, our 5 properties represent the only ready-built new construction stock available in Gunnedah right now. We have choked out the entire supply. So when these are sold, there's no equivalent product coming behind them, right? So Building approvals, as I referenced before, 0.04 of stock, effectively zero new supply. So this is a big reason why we're here. So let's go to talk about how we secure this. So how do you actually move forward if tonight has resonated? So I want to be straightforward about the timeline. One half of that one, Yaran, it's a mouthful for me. Yarandu has already sold to a local buyer, as we referenced. These properties are attracting interest from the market. If you're seriously considering one, the conversation needs to happen soon. And not because I'm creating urgency, but because the supply is genuinely finite, right? So what I did is I've got an exclusive short-term option on all five of these remaining properties. They remain on the market on realestate.com and Domain. You can see them yourself if you check. They're all marked as under offer. They're under offer for us to sell to our clients exclusively in this window. And they are, of course, generating interest from the general public. They've already sold one. When that exclusive period finishes, they will then sell them to their own buyers directly. So there is a very, short window for us to act. Should we have a look at the cash flow? So let's have a look at, I'm just going to work on one Yarandu close. So I'm going to work on pretty much standard numbers from our clients. And we can model this out very specifically to your bespoke numbers tomorrow or anytime if you've got an interest in buying one of these. But I'm just going to use what typically ends up being the case with our clients, which is a 20% deposit, which means it's an 80% loan to value ratio, 6.3% interest only repayments, and they sit in the 43% tax bracket. So we're talking about focusing on one single property here. So $625,000 purchase. You're going to need about 150 grand in deposit and costs. So that's stamp duty and on costs like that, conveyancing. We've got a 5.41% rental yield, market appraisal 650 bucks a week in rent. So the before tax benefit, you're $129 out of pocket. When you add in depreciation, which is going to sit somewhere between $18,000 and $21,000, we've modeled this at the lower $18,000 rate. We're going to be after tax every week about plus $75 in your pocket. So this is positively geared on that basis. Now, if we apply that to the duplex pair, it's about $153. If we go to the 660 property at the 5.12, it ends up being about $47 in positive territory, or 131 for the duplex pair. So very attractive numbers that we're looking at from there. So from here to settled, 6 steps. So we're going to manage every step of this process with you if you're interested. You're not going to do this alone, right? So full service buyer's agent. So step 1 is having this one-on-one conversation with me and my team. We're going to look at your equity position, your borrowing capacity, and whether or not this fits your portfolio. So I reckon that's 30 minutes. It's no obligation. Book that time in if you want to have that chat. Step 2 is establishing if you can get finance pre-approval if you haven't already got a conditional approval in place. So if you don't have one, we'll connect you up with the right broker, or you can use your own. We just want you to get that certainty so you can act with speed. Step 3 is going to be a contract review, whether it's your conveyancer or one that we recommend. We're happy to coordinate that so you can review that New South Wales contract. Step 4 will be exchanging contracts. So once you and your solicitor are comfortable, contracts are going to get exchanged and the property is secured. Now, in that period, typically there's a 5 to a 10-day cooling off period in New South Wales. That is when we would do a building and pest report. And as I mentioned earlier, I've already physically inspected these properties personally myself last Thursday and last Friday. We've got video walkthrough tours of all of these properties, and we've got external property manager from competing agencies on letterhead their rental appraisals. So we've done all the homework for you, and we've got a pack, an information pack that we can give you access to. That'll give you all the information, including cash flow analysis, the contract for sales, the brochures on the properties, the floor plans, the photos, everything. So we're very well organized on that front if there's of interest to put your hand up. And step 6 is going to be settlement, right? So from the moment you exchange, we're going to present you with 3 leading property managers locally in that area. We're going to help you guide to find the right decision of who to use. Ultimately, it's your decision. We're going to make sure you take the right pick. Once selected, your property manager begins marketing for a tenant, and the goal is to generate, as I said, income from day one. So Q&A. We ran this through our customer base this afternoon, and we've got significant interest from our own internal customer database, and some really good questions came out of that. So I wanted to build the slideshow around what some of the feedback was from our customers today, because I think they're legitimate questions and they're worth unpacking. Question one, why regional and not a capital city market? So two reasons for us. So construction economics is one and supply dynamics. The cost of land plus construction in any capital city means a brand new 322 like this can't be delivered at 625 grand. You're going to be looking at 900 to 1.1 million in most metro markets. And at that price point, the yield goes and compresses down to 3 to 4%. Typically it's going to sit in that range. So you're negatively geared in a meaningful way. You're dependent entirely then on capital growth to trade your way out of that mess. So in Gunnedah, the construction economics allow a new build at a price point that delivers that 5.4% yield from day one. So there's a real specific reason we're here. It's about value, right? The other issue with Metro is building approval pipelines. Most high demand capital city corridors have got deep pipelines of approved new supply, which competes directly with your asset for tenants and for resale buyers, right? So Gunnedah's building approval ratio being near zero, effectively nothing being built, you're not competing with a wave of new stock, which is really important. Next question is, what are my exit options, right? What's the strategy to exit if I go to sell? And we addressed the vacancy rate already in these slides. It's 2.36% and it's trending down. So we've got independent rental appraisers, as I just mentioned, from competing local agencies. And it's not our own property manager. We've done our own internal review of what we think they're worth as well, which aligns nicely. These aren't optimistic numbers from someone trying to sell you something. It's what local agents who have got no skin in the game are telling us the market will pay. And the reason is simple, right? There's very little quality stock locally in that market. The property next door just sold to local owner occupier family. So you can see there's investors and there's owner occupiers that want to live in this location. So two completely separate buyer pools competing for the same asset type. That's your vacancy protection. That's also your exit strategy, right? And in terms of the exit options, you got more options than most regional assets offer. First, you sell to another investor because the yield's so high, right? And you've got depreciation and you've got warranty. So it's a pretty straightforward investment case for the next person down the line. And the second is to sell to what we just discussed, an owner occupier. So we've got demonstrated full price sale next door last week. And the last option is if you hold for a full duplex pair and you buy both, then you can sell halves individually over time, right? So you've got a broader buyer pool and you've got flexibility on timing. The last one that you should discuss is simply holding, right? If it's compounding at the growth rate that we've mentioned to you already, the market's never recorded a negative year in the data set. So if you don't need to sell, you simply don't have to, right? So that's a really important thing to leave you with. And question four, is a regional market more risky than capital cities? So the instinct that capital cities are safer is understandable, but the data does not consistently support it, right? Gunnedah's recorded near zero negative growth, we've just discussed, minimal, annual growth sat at 2.22% in its worst year, 10-year total growth at nearly 90%. Compare that to specific capital city markets. Many have had 2, 3, or 4 negative years in that same period. HTAG's RCS score for Gunnedah, as we mentioned, is 46. It's above our minimum threshold. The volatility index is low. This is not a boom bust market, right? The real risk in any investment is overpaying in a crowded market at peak supply. And that is the opposite of what we're doing here. As part of our process, though, as a full service buyer's agent, you need to know that we model out your situation to achieve your long-term goals. And I want to quickly show you how we do it because this part's really fascinating. So this is a planning software every GSP client gets access to. It's built entirely around your numbers, your properties, your equity, your goals, and your timeline. It's not generic projections, it's not industry averages, it's your situation. And it starts in the portfolio tab. So you load in everything you own, your home, any existing investments. The platform tells you what each asset has done since you bought it. So total growth, compounding annual rate, current value, your loan to value ratio, your equity position, and critically, exactly how much of that equity you can actually access and deploy into the next move that you're planning to do. So as your loan balance changes, the numbers update automatically, and it's a live picture of where you stand, and it's always current. And from there, we move into the plan tab, right? So this is where the strategy takes shape. You set a passive income target. Let's say it's 100 grand, at retirement, and the platform inflation adjusts that number out over your timeline. So you're working towards a real figure, not a false one. And now you've got a genuine North Star, okay? So we start building the portfolio around that. So 1 acquisition, 2, 3. At each step, you can see exactly how much closer you are at closing that gap. So we're reverse engineering your goals. Different price points, different timelines. using equity or cash, buying in different markets, modeling a future owner occupier, or leaving one out. You're not guessing at what might work. You're running scenarios with your actual numbers until the picture is clear. And that clarity matters because most investors stall not from a lack of money, but a lack of confidence in the plan. So this removes that, right? And then there's the brief page, last of all. So it's a live calculator where you can stress test any purchase before you commit to it. You change the rental yield, you change the loan structure around, you flip it from interest only to principal and interest, and you adjust the deposit. And you can watch the cash flow position shift in real time. Every variable is in your hands. So 3 tools, 1 platform, built so you always know where you stand, where you're going, and exactly what it will take to get there. So if you'd like free access to this tool and you want to have a play around with the software, run your own numbers, I've just pasted a link in the chat, which you can go and use yourself. So I'd highly encourage you to go and do that because you'll get a lot of value from doing so. So thank you for being here tonight. If any of that, any of what you've seen really fits your situation, the budget, the timeline, the approach, the next step is genuinely a conversation. It's not a commitment, it's not a deposit. It's a 30-minute call really to work out whether that fit is there. So book a call with me directly. It's on the link. We'll just put that in the chat. And I'll be more than happy to discuss these properties or your property goals in more detail. And for everyone who isn't ready to move right now, and that might be a portion of you, thank you so much for engaging seriously with the data tonight. Understanding what a well-selected regional market looks like and why ready-built matters is the current, policy, I guess, what would you call it? Like it's the mess that everyone's caught up in this policy change, and it's really worth unpacking. And we think ready built matters. So it's a genuinely useful conversation, regardless of whatever your timing is. So thank you so much for your time. Wish you well, and I hope to catch up with you guys all very soon privately from here. Thank you.